Happy Andy movie.
Yeah, back away. Yes. There's only one left. Oh. It's not one back there. There's no other place for them to go. We begin our morning service with the singing of Manto Vu on page 154. Matov ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkerotecha Yisrael. Matov ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkerotecha Yisrael. Va'ani berov chastecha avo beitecha eshtachaveh elecha kodshecha beiratecha ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkerotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkerotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahafti me'on beitecha u'mekom mishkan kerodecha va'ani eshtachaveh ve'echra evrecha lifnei Adonai osi. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Page 157. Don't let me fall as a stone falls upon the hard ground. Don't let my hands become dry as the twigs of a tree when the wind beats down on the last leaves, when the storm raises dust from the earth with anger and howling. Don't let me fall. I've asked for so much, but as a blade of your grass in the distant field, let's drop a seed in the lap of the earth and dies away. Sow in me your living breath as you sow a seed in the earth. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh kol basar machlilas. So it's hard to read from your glasses, Father. Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Shenatata bi tehorai. Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Shenatata bi tehorai. Ata berata, ata yetsarta, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata meshamera bekirbi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi tehorai. The Simcha Kol Yom is on page 160.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech bina lehavchim ben yom uven layla.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokea kivri.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kufufim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim et tzadikav.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam anoten la'ayaf koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'einai u'tenuma me'afafai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben kori.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
אלו דברים שאין להם שיעור, שאדם אוכל פירותיהם בעולם הזה, והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא, ואלו כן. כיבוד אב ואם וגמילות חסדים, והשכמת בית המדרש שחרית וערבית, והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים, והכנסת כלה ולוויית האמת בעיון תפילה, והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם.
We continue on page 181 for Psalm 150.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, bekocho, hallelujah, bekiauzo, hallelujah, bikurotav. Hallelujah, Carol, good Lord. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, take a shofar. Hallelujah, bechinor. Hallelujah, tofu machol. Hallelujah, bemini be'ulga. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, tzitzalei shama. Hallelujah, tzitzalei trua. כל הנשמה תהלליה, כל הנשמה תהלליה. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Chatzi Kaddish is on page 187.
יתקרא ויתקרא שמי רבה, ועלמא דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי כל ביום אחד ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב במהירות, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם הוויה, יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירה בעלמא במהירות, אמן.
We rise now in either body or spirit for the Baruch Hu on page 188.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uborei choshech oser shalom, uborei et hakol, yotzer or uborei choshech oser shalom, uborei et hakol. המאיר לארץ ולעדרים, עליה ברחמים, ובטובו בכל יום תמיד מעשה בראשית. יוצר אור בני חושך עושה שלום, ובורא את הכל. יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום, ובורא את הכל.
Ava Rabbah of Tanu Adonai Eloheinu, Chamla Gedolav V'Torah Chamalta Aleinu, V'Avor Avotenu V'Imotenu Shbachku B'cha V'Lamdehu Chaim Ken Tefonenu Lamdenu, Amrachem Rachem Aleinu V'Ten B'Livenu L'Havinu L'Maskil Shmoa L'Lmod L'Lamed V'Shmor V'La'asot V'Kayem Et Kol Divrei Talmud Toratecha V'Ahava. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe and perform all that is in your Torah.
והערנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש, ולא ניכלם, ולא ניכשל לעולם כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בתחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. 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 ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. Please be seated. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננת לבבך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבת על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמן.
We continue on page 199. If people fall, can they not also rise? If they break away, can they not return? The stork in the sky knows when to migrate. The dove and the swallow know the season of return. What human instinct knows the time to turn back? What cue sparks the conscience of the soul? We pray to sense this day anew, attuned to the call of sacred living. Emet ve'yatziv ve'ahuv ve'chaviv ve'nora ve'adir ve'tov ve'yafeh ha'adavar hazeh aleinu le'olam va'ed. For us, this eternal teaching is true and enduring, beloved and precious, awesome, good, and beautiful. The God of the universe is truly our sovereign, the rock of Jacob, our protecting shield. I, Adonai, have called you to righteousness and taken you by the hand and kept you. I have made you a covenant people, a light to nations.
We are Israel, a witness to God's covenant with our people.
This is the covenant I make with Israel. I will place my Torah in your midst and write it upon your hearts. I will be your God, and you will be my people.
We are Israel. Our Torah forbids the worship of race or nation, possessions or power.
Hate evil and love what is good. Let justice well up as waters, and righteousness as a mighty stream.
We are Israel, schooled in the suffering of the oppressed.
Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, desolation and destruction within your borders. All your children shall be taught of Adonai, and great shall be the peace of your children.
We are Israel, O God, when we are witnesses to your will and messengers of your truth.
You are my witnesses, says Adonai, and my servant whom I have chosen. And know me, therefore, and put your trust in me.
We are Israel, O God, when we proclaim you God of freedom, as did our ancestors on the shores of the sea. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar hakodesh, norati lo osefet. Shira chadasha shibechu geuli, לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדי חינומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Amen. Rise for tefillah. Adonai, Yadadai, Svatai Tifta, Adonai, Ufi Yagid, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Adonai, Svatai Tifta, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Adonai, Svatai Tifta, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Mekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imaot, U'mevii Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד אתה, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבולות ומדום אליו, מלך ממיט ומחייב ומציע ישועה, ונאמר אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Your might, O God, renews the earth. With dewdrops of light and blessing, let the earth be illumined and blessed. With dewdrops of joy and delight, let the earth rejoice and sing. With dewdrops of life and well-being, let the earth be revived and improved. With dewdrops of redemption, let the earth be redeemed. Yivracha velo lekalal, l'chaim velo lemavet, l'sova velo leratzon. For blessing and not for curse, for life and not for death, for abundance and not want.
We continue on page 212. Ekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני מקומו. אחד אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד אור לך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, נגיד אור לך. ולנצח נצחי קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. ושבח אלוהינו מפינו לא יבוש לעולם לעולם ועד. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך. ולנצח נצחי קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. ושבח אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. אמן. אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים, ואהבת אותנו ורצית בנו, ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות, וקידשתנו במצוותיך, וקרבתנו מלכנו לעבודתך, ושמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת. ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה מועדים לשמחה, חגים וזמנים לששון, ביום חג הסוכות הזה, זמן שמחתנו מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים.
You have chosen us in love and favor by making us holy through your mitzvot and drawing us close in your service, that through us your great and holy name may become known in all the earth. In your love, Adonai, our God, you have given us feasts of gladness and seasons of joy, this festival of Sukkot, season of our thanksgiving, to unite in worship and recall the exodus from Egypt. We continue on page 216. Bestow upon us the blessing of your holy festivals, and may we celebrate them as to be worthy of your blessing. Our God and God of our ancestors, make us holy with your mitzvot, and let your Torah be our way of life. May our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. Let your holy festivals remain our heritage, and let us celebrate them with love and favor and joy, so that all Israel, hallowing your name, may have cause to rejoice. We praise you, Adonai, who sanctifies the house of Israel and the festivals. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Yisrael ve'hazmanim. We continue with silent prayer through page 229.
עושה שלום במרומה, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו, Amen.
It is Zman Simchatenu, the time for celebration, the time for joy in our lives. And it is also one of the three major festivals of Judaism, which is why we continue now on page 296 for our songs of Hallel, our songs of praising God, reenacting what the priests did when there was a temple, when an altar was there, sacrifices would be brought in. And And as people would bring in their sacrifices to the altar, you'd hear the songs of the priests singing out these words of Hallel. Maybe not the same exact tune, but close enough. We continue with our blessing on page 296.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et ha'halel. Amen. Hallelujah, 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 de Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 et Shem Adonai. Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach, me'ata ve'ad. Yehi Shem Adonai mevorach. Page 298. B'tzei Yisrael miMitzrayim ben Yaakov me'am lo'etz hayta Yehuda lekodsho Yisrael mamshelotav hayam vayanos hayarden yisob le'achor Harim rakdu che'ilim gebaot kivnei tzon B'tzei Yisrael miMitzrayim ben Yaakov me'am lo'etz hayta Yehuda lekodsho Yisrael mamshelotav.
Psalm 115, Adonai is mindful of us. God will bless us. God will bless the house of Israel. God will bless the house of Aaron. God will bless those who fear Adonai, small and great alike. Page 300, how can I repay Adonai for all God's bounties to me? I raise up the cup of deliverance and invoke the name of Adonai. I will pay my vows to Adonai in the presence of all God's people. The death of God's faithful ones is grievous in Adonai's sight. Adonai, I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have undone the cords that bound me. I will sacrifice a thanks offering to you and invoke the name of Adonai. I will pay my vows to Adonai in the presence of all God's people. In the courts of the house of Adonai, in the midst of Jerusalem. Hallelujah.
We continue on the bottom of page 301 with Psalm 118. Hodu l'Adonai, ki tov, ki le'olam, ki le'olam, ki le'olam chasto, yomar na Yisrael, ki le'olam, ki le'olam, ki le'olam chasto. Yomeruna beit Aharon, ki le'olam, ki le'olam, ki le'olam chasto. Yomeruna yir'ei Adonai, ki le'olam, ki le'olam, ki le'olam chasto.
Psalm 118 on page 303.
Itkuli sha'arei tzedek, avo ba'odeya. Itkuli sha'arei tzedek, avo יבואו עודך כי עניתני ותהי לי ישועה עודך כי עניתני ותהי לי ישועה אבן מסו הבונים הייתה לראש פינה ידחו לי שערי צדק אבובה אודיה זה השם לאדוני צדיקים יבואו בו.
We continue with Seder Kriyat Torah on page 230.
Please rise.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני עוזרנו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני מירושלים. 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 ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד אחד אלוהינו גדול אדוננו קדוש שמו. גדלו אדוני איתי ולרומם שמו יחדיו. השלושה דברים השלושה דברים שלושה דברים העולם עומד. השלושה דברים שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים.
Today we will be taking a little each, you may be seated. So our current place in the Torah cycle would be very late in Deuteronomy, since we're almost at Simchat Torah. We'll be taking a little festival detour today back to Leviticus. Now, if I have heard complaints about any book of the Torah from congregants, rabbinical students, clergy alike, it's about Leviticus. People often complain that Leviticus reads like an instruction manual, very dry, a lack of narrative. But there is a story to Leviticus if you look closely enough, especially when it's brought up as a festival reading. This isn't an instruction manual that you pulled out of a box. This is something left to you by your ancestors. And sometimes when the Torah is at its most dry, That's where it's feeling the most. If you think back to when we left the Exodus, what happens immediately after we cross the sea? After the singing? There's a census. Incredibly dry to us as modern readers, but it shows that at that time, we needed to take care of our community. We needed to see that everybody was safe. And at the high holidays, we're at a place of stress as well. Not only is it the start of a new year, but back in the time of our Torah, it was the time of the harvest. Everything was hanging by a string. Would we have enough food to survive or would we not? Here, in this portion of Leviticus, we review the rules, instructions, and observances of all the holidays of the year. It is a gift from our ancestors, hoping that we will continue to uphold their traditions, and also a hope that they themselves will be able to survive another year on the harvest. So I hope that we can look to this portion of Leviticus not as dry, not as simply rules, but as a gift. To the Torah. Do David Ben Santa.
Let Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael lemor. V'chamisha asar yom. L'chodesh hashvi'i hazeh. Chag HaSukkot. Shivat yamim l'Adonai. B'yom harishon mikra kodesh. Kol melechet avodah lo tasu. Shivat yamim. Hakriu ishe l'Adonai. B'yom hashmini mikra kodesh. Yehyeh lechem v'hikraftem. Ishe l'Adonai et zeret hu. Mlechet avodah lo tasu. Ele moadei Adonai asher asher tikra'u otam mikrai kodesh lehakriv ishe l'Adonai ale umincha tevachu nesachim daber yam be'yom milvad Shivat B'Shem Adonai umilvad metonetechem umilvad kol nidrechem umilvad kol nivotechem avotehem asher titenu Adonai B'chamisha asar yom L'chodesh hashvi'i v'ospechem et fu'at ha'aretz v'chogu et chag Adonai שבע ימים. ביום הראשון שבתון, וביום השמיני שבתון. ולקחתם לכם ביום הראשון פרי עץ הדר כפות תמרים, בענף עץ אבות וערבי נחל, ושמחתם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם שבעת ימים, וחגותם אותו חג לאדוני שבעת ימים בשנה, חוקת עולם לדורותיכם, בחודש השביעי תחגגו אותו, בסוכת תשבו 7 ימים, כל האזרח בישראל ישבו בסוכות, למען ידעו תורתכם, כי בסוכות הושבתי את בני ישראל, וחוצאי אותם מארץ מצרים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
ברכו את אדוני, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטל בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה. יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי לי לי, yai lai yai lai la 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 la, yai lai la la, yai la 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 la, yai lai la 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 la, lai 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 lai, yai la 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 la, yai lai la 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 la, yai lai 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 lai, yai la 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 la, yai lai la 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 la.
Continue on page 250. No?
Continue on page 248. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratza b'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עבור, ובנביאי האמת בצדק. We are reading from Zechariah chapter 14, verses 7 through 9 and 16 through 21. והיה יום אחד ויוודע לאדוני לא יום ולא לילה והיה לעת עבר יהיה אור והיה ביום ההוא יצאו מים חיים מירושלים חציים אל הים הקדמוני וחציים על הים האחרון בקיץ ובחורף יהיה. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד והיה כל הנותר מכל הגויים הבאים על ירושלים ועלו מדי שנה ושנה להשתחוות למלך אדוני צבאות ולחוג את חג הסוכות והיה אשר לא יעלה מאת משפחות הארץ אל ירושלים להשתחוות למלך אדוני צבאות ולא עליהם יהיה הגשם ועם משפחת מצרים לא תעלה ולא באה ולא עליהם תהיה המגפה אשר יגוב אדוני אל הגויים אשר לא יעלו לחוג את חג הסוכות זאת תהיה חטאת מצרים לחטאת כל הגויים אשר לא יעלו לחוג את חג הסוכות ביום ההוא יהיה על מצילות הסוס קודש לאדוני והיה הסירות בבית אדוני המזרקים לפני המזבח והיה כל סיר בירושלים לוי יהודה קודש לאדוני צבאות ובאו כל הזובחים ולקחו מהם ובישלו בהם ולא יהיה כנעני עוד בבית אדוני צבאות Bayom Hahu. There shall be an endless day, its timing only known to God, neither day nor night, and at evening time it shall be light. And on that day the living waters shall go forth from Jerusalem, one half to the eastern sea, the other half to the western sea. This shall happen in the summer and the winter. And the Eternal shall reign over all the earth. On that day the Eternal shall be one, and known to be one. And the survivors of all the nations who came against Jerusalem, year by year, shall go up to worship the sovereign God of heaven's host and celebrate the festival of Sukkot. But whoever from among the families of the earth does not go up to Jerusalem to worship the sovereign God of heaven's hosts shall have no rain. And if the family of Egypt does not go up, shall it not be struck by the same plague that shall strike the other nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot? Such shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. On that day, the bells of the horses shall have holy to the Eternal on them, and the pots in the house of the Eternal shall be like the basins before the altar, and every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holy to the God of heaven's hosts. Then all who sacrifice shall come and take them and boil their sacrifices in them. And on that day there no longer be any traitors in the house of the God of heaven's hosts. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sur kol haolamim Sadiq bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'medaber u'mekayim, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom chag ha'sukot hazeh, shenatata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, L'sason u'lesimcha, lechavod u'letif'aret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, u'mevarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai, tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted.
Hodo aletz v'shamayim, v'yarem ke'letamo, tehillah lechol chazinav, Livnei Yisrael am kerobo. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
When Torah entered the world, freedom entered it. The whole Torah exists only to establish peace.
Its highest teaching is love and kindness. What is hateful to you, do not do to any person.
That is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn. Those who study Torah are true guardians of civilization.
Honoring one another, doing acts of kindness, and making peace. These are our highest duties. But the study of Torah is equal to them all, because it leads to them all.
Let us learn in order to teach. Let us learn in order to do.
Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim ba v'tomecheha me'ushar darkei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha
While as a rabbi I have to enjoy all of the holidays equally, I do have a favorite. That favorite actually happens to be Sukkot. I love the fall, although I'm not a great fan of the pumpkin spice that's sold everywhere ad nauseum. That I kind of see as being a plague onto the nation. But despite all the pumpkin spice that's out there in the world, fall is one of my favorite times. The leaves changing with the foliage, and especially with Sukkot. I just absolutely love being in my sukkah with friends, with family, a nice chill breeze going through, and singing and being festive. It seems as though the holiday is really just meant to be enjoyed and celebrated. From the building of a sukkah, to the shaking of a lulav and etrog, to bringing people in. And even in a pandemic, it seems like we're perfectly geared for Sukkot because it's an outdoors dwelling place. So you already have one of the checks of social distancing checked off. My kids love shaking the lulav and etrog. Maybe one of them thinks it's more of a sword than anything else, but that child will remain unnamed, even though you probably already know which one of the two it is. But they love shaking it. In fact, even from Matthew's earliest days, I have a video recording, actually from every single day of Sukkot. And Gavin is holding the lulav and etrog, and Matthew is 6 months old in his high chair. And Gavin is shaking the lulav, going shaky, 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 shaky. And Matthew is just giggling his tuchus off and he almost throws up one time because he's laughing so much. And he was able to get this laughter out of his brother every single day for the holiday. So it's easy to understand when our Torah says this is a time of complete joy, right? So much is put into that emphasis of having joy right now. But I'll be honest, I think it's also one of the hardest mitzvot to fulfill. That every single moment of the entire week of Sukkot, you need to find joy. I'm going to talk about this more on Friday night, but we've had several families in our congregation lose loved ones over these last couple of days, with burials either right before Sukkot or during Sukkot. And it's always a painful thing to have to explain to the family the rules of Sukkot in burial. And why can't you do this, or why can't you do that? Or Shiva, that if somebody is buried before Sukkot, as soon as Sukkot starts, Shiva is over, and you don't return to it. Or if somebody's buried during Sukkot, you're not supposed to sit Shiva until the moment that Sukkot is after it ends, and then you start counting the 7 days. I had one family say to me, how do we just turn off Shiva like it's a faucet? How do we turn off our grief? How do we turn off our mourning? I had another family say, well, we bury our loved ones and then we sit as if nothing happened for a week and then we start to grieve? The answer is no. You grieve, you mourn, right? Especially in the world of COVID and pandemic around us. Turning off the human emotion for sadness is just not possible. When you lose someone, you cannot turn off the grief. You cannot turn off the sadness. It doesn't work that way. There are so many commandments in our Torah that are aspirational, that set a high bar, perhaps without any assumption that we'll actually hit that measure and hit that mark. Most Sukkot of our lives, I'm sure we will hit the mark of finding joy. But that doesn't mean we have to find it every single one. I think one of the reasons why Sukkot we're commanded to find joy despite all the other things that are happening around us is even though, as Jews, we live in a world of hope, as Rabbi Miller said on Yom Kippur morning, it doesn't mean that we always live in the world of optimism. We can be hopeful about the pessimism we feel in the world. As Jews, we tend to be pessimistic, even with hope in our hearts. Who's going to abuse us next? Who's going to exile us next? Who is going to hate us next? But we still live with hope that tomorrow will be better. The two are not contradictory. However, it's very hard to be pessimistic while you're also full of joy. So I think the point of this on Sukkot, of finding joy, not hope, is to try to remind us that if we live in a world of pessimism forever, the spark of life gets diminished. What I explained to the families who are mourning and are mourning their losses, is that, well, I asked them, do you think your loved one would want you to live in a world of despair? Do you think your loved one would want you not to move on with your life? Do you think your loved one would ever want you to not find joy and happiness again? Yes, grieve. But while you're grieving during Sukkot, try to share stories about your loved one that brought you joy, that brought you gladness. And if you have tears, hopefully there'll be tears of joy over the fond memories you have. Looking out at this room, and I think most of us know what it is to lose someone incredibly close to us, to know what that taste of loss is. We know that when we're living in those exact moments when it happens, it's really hard to find brighter days. But one of the reasons why we have Shiva and why we have the community is to help guide us towards those brighter days. Our tradition tries to emphasize that we always choose life, that we always try and find the joy, that we always try and figure out where our legacies lie in the world and to let the legacies of our loved ones shine on. So I want to encourage all of us, with all of our grief, with all of our sadness, with all of our hearts though, to still find joy in a world that sometimes feels dark. I know we're all touched by some of the recent passings. But may we do their legacies justice by living lives that make others better. Because each of the passings that our community has experienced in the last couple of days, from the Taubers to the Rabbi Glasser's husband Jake to Laura Gordon's father Stephen, each one of them left a legacy of value, of lifting other people up, of making people laugh and finding joy. So yes, even on this Sukkot, may we always, always be able to find joy and help others find joy who need joy the most.
From the Hallel section, Hodu Ladonai Kito Ki Leolam Kasto. Hodu Ladonai, Ladonai Kito Ki Leolam, Leolam Kasto. Hodu Ladonai, Ladonai Kito Ki Leolam, Leolam Kasto. Oh, we give thanks to you. For your love is never ending, Ki le'olam chasto. And we give thanks to you, For the world is now depending on Ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, Ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, Ki le'olam chasto. With all of our hearts we pray for peace everlasting each day, when we who are Israel will know Ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, Ki le'olam chasto. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, Ki le'olam chasto. Ki le'olam chasto.
So as a change this year for COVID, we aren't doing our lunches in the sukkah in the same way. Instead of having all 90 or 100 people coming into an enclosed space to have a meal for a given set of time, we are making kind of a pop-up. Come on by, say hello, shake the lulav and etrog, and have a treat. And hopefully, because it's from 2 to 4 on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll have it staggered enough where we're all able to be social distanced enough to shake lulav and etrog, of course, before and after sanitizing one's hands, and being able to have a bite as well. And you know what we should do? We should get the lemon-scented sanitizer that will the smell of the etrog with you the entire time.
Etrog scented.
The etrog scented. I wonder if Procter and Gamble's are making that yet. We can go down the road and ask. We continue our service now with Eleno on page 322. Please, Ross.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה יוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הרצון, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל העולם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ועולים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 327. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love to each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech. May we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד ושמו
Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We rise now as one community for the words of Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish on page 334. Yitkadal, Yikadash, Shemirabah, Bialma, Dibra, Kurute, Bialif, Malfute, Bachai, Yekon, Biomekon, Kai, Yekol, Beit Israel, Bagalah, Bisman, Kari, Bimru, Ami, Yehesh, Shemir, Rabba, Barak, Lelam, Lameamai, Yitbarak, Vishtabak, Vitpahar, Vitroman, Vitnase, Vitadar, Vitaleb, Vitalal, Shemir, Krishna, Riku, Le'ela Minko Birkata Bashirata, Tushbakata Nekamata, Damiran Biama Bimru Amen. Yehesh Lama Rabba Mishamaya, Bechaim Aleinu Bel Ko Yisrael, Bimru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimrama, Uya Aseh Shalom Aleinu Bel Ko Yisrael, Bimru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, which we say, Amen.
Ose shalom bimrama, Use shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ne'im. Amen. We close our service today with, on page 400, with the singing of Turn, Turn, Turn. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.